Hi everyone, I'm DeFi Dad and you're watching episode 23 of Yield TV. All right, it is Thursday, October 29th, and I've got the managing editor of CoinDesk, Zack Seward, with me, who I've actually, we should talk about our origin story, but Zack, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
Hey, DeFi Dad, it's really good to be here. I didn't know you were actually COO, so congrats, that's awesome. I didn't know you were a C-suite executive.
No, it's like I'm a part of the core team. It's
Good,
funny,
good.
like we were on a call and someone said, what is your role? I'm like, I work for Zapper and I support the talented founders here. So yeah,
That's good.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. So yeah, today I really want to pick your brain, Zack, as someone who, you sit at one of the, the most well-known names that's covering the crypto space, CoinDesk. You guys have really, I think, like, you date back to the start of Bitcoin. Like, I don't know what year you started, but curious to kind of dig into that in the history of CoinDesk. But I'm really interested, as someone who has always been fascinated by journalism, and you have like a sort of decorated career, like working across all sorts of different organizations. I want to dig into like how you found yourself in crypto and how it's different and similar to what you've done in the past. So maybe we can start with actually, do you want to tell the story of how we reconnected since college? And
yeah, I mean, I'll tell it in really vague terms, and then you can just like color in the details. Okay, so DeFi Dad and I, before we were both dads, we went to college and we met each other at college, and then many years had passed, and we both found ourselves at an Ethereum event. I believe it was Ethereal in Brooklyn. I think it was 2019, maybe the spring of 2019.
Right.
And we were just like talking about something, and we're like, wait, well, I think I was like, dude, you look really familiar. Do I like know you from somewhere? What is this about? And then one thing led to another, and we sort of like pieced it together, like bits and pieces. But yeah, fill it out as much as you want.
Yeah, I think it's funny only because we hadn't seen each other in over 10 years. And I was a freshman on the baseball team. Zack was a senior. And actually, it's funny because your class, we had a very like special bond. Just in a nutshell, you guys had a bunch of very nice guys who kind of looked out for all of us like young guys on the team. And yeah, it's just so weird because I saw you and I remember I knew that you had just joined CoinDesk, and I was actually going up to say, like, you guys had started to really cover Ethereum more heavily. And it was exciting to me because I was really getting deep into DeFi and recognized it was like a growing narrative, and that you guys were hopping onto that to like dive deeper, especially with all the stories like Brady's been doing. So yeah, anyways, long story short, it was like meant to be like a, hey man, thanks for coming. And then it was like, why do we know each other?
Whoa, it was like accessing like the baseball bro part of my deep brain.
I had shut off.
What is going on? This is crazy.
Anyways, so that was, it's been great to reconnect and kind of fun to find ourselves in similar places in life as crypto-oriented folks, but also, I guess, as dads. So anyways, here we are. So Zack, can you talk to me more about your career as a journalist before CoinDesk? And I guess, like, what is similar and what's so different about covering the crypto space?
Yeah, absolutely. So my career prior to CoinDesk, I joined CoinDesk at the very end of 2018. So November 1st, 2018 was my first day at CoinDesk. Before that, I had sort of just done regular tech and business and science reporting, honestly. Got my start in public radio. So worked for a couple of public radio stations doing just kind of business reporting. Innovation reporting was what we called it at the time. Public radio, NPR land runs on grants. So at some point there was a grant to do like innovation coverage. And I was like fresh out of J school. I'm like, I will go to Rochester, New York and cover, innovation in the shadow of the once great Kodak. So it timed out nicely where I was up there for Kodak's bankruptcy and ended up getting some national coverage out of that. And then came down to Philadelphia to do similar work at WHYY. And then after a while, about 4 years in radio, I was like, I'm seeing a hard seen a hard journey up in terms of getting to like, at the time I wanted to do kind of like newsroom management, be a top dog. So I jumped over to a small online publication called Technically Philly was the flagship, and we covered local tech communities, right? So all these cities, outside of the Bay Area, right, have these small but thriving communities of technologists. And the premise of Technically was like, we're going to cover this like a community newspaper would, right? So we were sort of like the paper of record for these small communities of people building cool things with technology. So I did that for another 4 years. And then sort of in the process of that, we had a Brooklyn site. So my guy, Tyler Woods, did a lot of early Ethereum coverage by way of Consensus being in Brooklyn. So we did a lot of deep dive into what is this weird world computer thing, and what is this quietly large conglomerate doing in Brooklyn, and what are they building? So we ended up doing a bunch of coverage on that. One thing led to another. CoinDesk was looking to bring on editors, and I had conversations with people who were running the newsroom at the time, and was like, yeah, I'm down. I'll make the jump into crypto news. So I think as it relates to like what's different and what's the same, some of the same just like business reporting fundamentals are absolutely the same. I think like the cadence of crypto news, though, especially for me coming from like local news, the cadence and like the competitiveness is on steroids, right? Like we are battling for scoops every day, and there's a lot of talented reporters in this space who have learned to keep up with all the crazy things that are happening in the crypto industry. So the fundamentals are the same, but like again, the cadence and sort of like the competitive aspect, which I ended up really, really loving, were different and were really refreshing for me, like personally.
Yeah, it feels like a really difficult job. Like even just with this live stream, which is more of, this is a editorial / educational type like show where, I get to interview interesting folks like you, but to have the pressures of like covering all of the crypto space, try to cover it objectively, of course, with really strong opinions and lots of money at stake behind those opinions. It's got to be nuts. I think something you called out too, though, that's really interesting to me is, so you started out in journalism covering like the death of like the king of photography, Kodak.
Yeah.
I grew up in a camera store, so like those were pretty depressing years to me to kind of like realize that, like, gosh, like everything has changed so much with smartphones and we're going to use these. But anyways, getting back to you watch that industry sort of like die off, and now you're in an industry that just is growing by leaps and bounds. What do you find to be the most interesting narratives right now as an editor? And also feel free to touch on maybe like what readers find to be the most interesting versus, I guess, what you personally find most interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think there's so much going on. I think like you mentioned, right? Like new ideas, like big money at stake. It sort of like creates sort of like a tribalist dynamic oftentimes. So watching that unfold in its
What are you talking about, Zach? Nothing.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Chill. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, everyone's chill. No big deal. Whatever. Rising tide lifts all boats. So I think just like following, sort of keeping, having learning that by osmosis over the months and years has been interesting. The stuff that's, I think, just like, it's hard not to look at the Bitcoin Ethereum dichotomy and like, that rocky road, the sort of like two very vibrant spheres that are kind of doing different things. So I think
kind of battling, like there's
it's like they kind of like they always butt heads. I feel like the the Bitcoin maxis versus Ethereum maxis. It was a very contentious summer on crypto Twitter, right? As like
totally.
As the various momentum surged, I think, to the Ethereum camp over the summer. So anyway, it's just fun to watch that unfold, and I think it's really interesting how we're seeing both like a ton of momentum around Bitcoin as like a treasury and reserve asset for companies like MicroStrategy and Square. We're seeing momentum grow around that narrative of digital gold, and this is how we preserve value in a time that's likely to see much inflation going forward. And then also going on at the same time is this like Ethereum like really hitting its stride with, here's all the cool things you can do with this network. And that's the story of DeFi summer. That's the story of yield farming, liquidity mining. Here's all the things that are actually working when you can do various different things based on, you know, Ethereum and smart contracts. So it's been cool, I think, in the last 3 months to see these sort of like separate narratives gaining momentum and establishing themselves for these like respective camps. And yeah, I think a lot of stuff's interesting. I think like base layer stuff is super interesting. Like, I think, you know, we're going to see, you know, the high fees of summer, I think we're just now kind of starting to see projects really seriously consider other base layers for, you know, stuff that previously had been running on Ethereum or Ethereum sidechains. Yeah. So I kind of think, if I had to bet, I kind of think like the base layer story is going to become more interesting in the next 3 to 6 months. So watching that sharply right now.
What do you find the most compelling outside of Ethereum and Bitcoin? Because I can tell you, like, obviously that's where a larger amount of our attention goes. So I'm always worried that I might be missing some like fast developing narrative, or really let's not call it a narrative, real progress happening on another blockchain. And a few of those I think of are like a Polkadot, Cosmos. I think about the Binance Smart Chain, Solana has been in the news a lot lately. Anyways, can you tell me objectively, like, yeah, which one of those do you see maybe more development happening?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I mean, I think the phenomenon of like ghost chains is something that's been pointed out recently. Like, there's a lot of value like locked in networks that aren't doing much really, and we need to start thinking about that more seriously. But I think of the ones that are potentially interesting to me are, again, sort of the base layer competitors. So like Near, Solana. I think Solana certainly, you know, certainly like Solana has seen activity with I think it was like FTX or something. They're trying to build something over there that's DeFi related. So those ones are interesting to me, like the high throughput ones that can do some of the stuff that Ethereum has done and maybe do it better. And so I think people are going to be experimenting with that going forward. So those are the ones that are interesting to me. What else is interesting to me? Yeah, I think the competing base layers. I don't super get like the interoperability stuff like around Cosmos and Polkadot. I think we're going to see some examples there that will help make that make sense to plebes like myself. But certainly we're paying attention to them as they sort of get on their feet and like, you know, keep building. So I think there is activity over in Polkadot land and over in Cosmos land, certainly. So seeing like cross-chain applications or like cross like substrate applications, if you're talking about Polkadot, I really want to see some like compelling examples where it's like, oh, okay, I get it now. Like this makes sense. Like I get why interoperability is valuable. And I think you sort of begin to see that with like the DeFi stuff over the summer, right? Like how cool would it be if we could do DeFi on Bitcoin? And like you start to see it with like Wrap Bitcoin sort of entering the Ethereum ecosystem in big numbers. So there will surely be some example where like all of a sudden I'm like, oh, Cosmos, okay, cool. Yeah, I get it now. Like it took me like, you know, people probably had that in their mind when it like first launched like a year ago or whatever. But like, you know, for other people, I think those examples of like, oh, okay, like here's a specific concrete thing that seems to be working. That to me is when like, you know, you start paying attention more closely.
I'm curious, as an editor, how do you I guess use a framework to decide, you know, what you will and won't publish? This is stuff that I'm super ignorant to, but I at least know that it like exists in newsrooms. And I think about the pressures and the excitement of, you know, you have a space with lots of money in it, everyone's long, and everyone wants coverage for their blockchain, even while Ethereum and Bitcoin sort of dominate those news cycles right now. Anyways, just curious, like, yeah, how do you vet a story just at a high level? Like how do you decide when to publish? And I guess I'm more interested in like, when do you decide not to? Like what conversation has to happen for you to be like, we just can't publish this. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so first of all, it's always like an art, not a science. And I think the best stories are the ones that again, like illustrate an existing narrative, right? Like it could be a small thing. It could be a small development that a project is announcing or talking about. But if it can clearly be linked to a bigger trend that's happening in the industry, more times than not, it's worth having that on the site. So that's sort of like my view most expansively. I think there's a lot of like really interesting conversations right now, mostly led by, you know, Balaji Srinivasan on Twitter about who about like the utility of media writ large, right? Like, you know, I think he and others are saying, you know, just companies like just be your own media, you know, be your own distribution channel. So I've been thinking about that a lot and trying to figure out where a publication like CoinDesk can really thrive and stand out. And I think, you know, I think there's certainly utility and value in being like, you know what, we're not going to cover this announcement. Like, it's no one cares. It's not worth our while. You know, we're going to like try to optimize ourselves for scoops and optimize ourselves for like material, non-public information that people in the market will care about. So, you know, there's only 24 hours in a day. And so you got to kind of be like, okay, well, do I cover this announcement that's going to end up on someone's Medium blog? Or do I, you know, do I trust that if I give my reporter the time to surface bigger stories, you know, be that PayPal in June, or, you know, be that the next, you know, underreported exploit in a DeFi protocol, if I give them that time, maybe that's a story that we as a you know, like a third party and outside arbiter of what's going on in the space, maybe that's something that is more important for us to deliver, as opposed to, you know, company Y does X, you know, like that, like those dribs and drabs updates. So it's something certainly worth thinking about. And honestly, I probably overthink it, like in big, like media terms. But it's definitely like always, it's a daily reality, right? Like we're kind of inundated with stuff and we're like, okay, well, what's the case for why this is important to a reader of CoinDesk.com? And if you can situate it in a bigger narrative or a bigger trend, a small thing is a perfectly worthwhile update. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, I can imagine like dwelling on this topic you're talking about, like basically like what does the future of media end up looking like? Because even in just the last few years, while I've been in the space, I have you know, I pay attention mostly to you guys and the block, and as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, the business model of CoinDesk is more familiar to me. It's about ads, and you guys do these like huge events too. Like I think that's one of the things everyone knows you for is the consensus event annually, and now you're doing virtual events as well.
Yep.
But then the block, as far as I understand, they have a subscription model. And then I think about beyond that, like what else is there? You know, there was what was the tokenized media company for a few years there?
Oh, there was Civil there, and then Block TV had tried to have a token for a little bit. I will correct the record. You're right. You're right about the block using like subscription and like sort of like prosumer services as like their main revenue source, as far as I understand it. CoinDesk thing has always really been events, though. Like the majority of our revenue has always been tied to events. So like for a long stretch there, we didn't have any ads on the site. We just recently rolled back ads. Like we brought ads back to the site. They're not like programmatic crappy ads, but they're like, you know, hand selected, fine, good, the good bespoke ads. So
yes, it is the
finest of that. Only the best. But no. So basically, like events have always been the bread and butter. So yes, events are the bread and butter. That to me is like maybe a more honest form of like extracting value from your audience, because you have to like earn someone's trust, admiration, grudging respect for them to show up to an event and maybe even pay a ticket to show up to that event. So that is what CoinDesk has done. The company that I was with previously technically was also like an early pioneer in doing events. So they would do like big like Philly Tech Week, and it would bring in like the lion's share of their revenue. So when I haven't been on air during pledge drives begging for money, the way that my companies have stayed afloat is basically just through events, which I think is, you know, every system has a trade-off, but like I think that one again is like maybe the more honest revenue model in the space, but it's just me.
By the way, too, I want to make sure I don't hold you over because you have an interview in 15 minutes. So do you have like 2 more minutes to go?
Oh, 2 more minutes, man. Let's go 10, man. Let's cut it close. I'm telling you, I live on deadlines, man. Like if I don't have a deadline, I'm just not doing anything. So yeah, we can go 2 more questions. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, going with what we were just discussing, a few years ago, if you would have asked me, like, do you think tokenized systems work? I'd say, well, I mean, other than just like the base layer, like, no, I don't really, I've never seen an example of it at the time. MakerDAO was still kind of like, continuing to grow, and we were like excited, but it was like one simple example that it actually worked. Do you think like now is a time that a decentralized news could actually launch? And like, I guess to keep in context too, that we referenced Block TV, which was I thought was really interesting to watch for some time. They never really got quite the traction, but it was interesting to watch what they were trying to do. I think about like everything that you're talking about, like these challenges with media. You're under tremendous pressures. It's deadline driven, so you have to have people that really want to be there, but at the same time, you have a business model where people want the content for free and they demand it, and they're almost like I think we find people are almost like up in arms when you ask, for them to pay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I remember hearing the Block talk about how challenging that is with the subscription model. So anyways, just like, do you think like now is the time for us to be able to potentially have a successful tokenized newsroom?
I think if there was a way, so like if you think about liquidity mining, right? It's like getting illiquid networks to have a community of people on there like overnight, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe if there was like some way to do that, like you could get a critical mass for other like types of projects that aren't about just making money hand over fist. I tend to be like a little doubtful that we're like even near like a critical mass point without some other innovation to like kickstart that. But like if you could, and like DeFi Dad, maybe this could be your project. You could be like, here is liquidity mining for, tokenizing a newsroom, right? Like what are the appropriate incentives to like, get growth around that so that there can be a community of people that is shaping daily coverage priorities. Maybe there's a way to do it, but like right now, without some sort of like catalytic innovation similar to what yield farming, is, I don't see it. But yeah, I think it would be really cool to think about, how do you bootstrap an otherwise, illiquid network into something where there's a dynamic community of people that could use their tokens to actually, do something. So I think that would be the challenge.
There's a few recent lessons that like stick out to me that like I haven't thought about this until, of course, like now that we're talking about it. But
me neither, by the way.
I think about don'tbuymeme.com, and so they're doing an artist series drop every week. And for anyone who doesn't know it, you basically have this token meme, you stake it, and for staking it, you earn credit to be able to have rights to mint pieces of digital art. So what's interesting to me about what they're doing is the artist series drop every week, which more recently started. This is the third artist series drop that they're doing. It's several pieces of art. And again, you have to kind of take your tokens and then put them into this new pool, stake, and you can take advantage of it. I kind of think about it with like a newsroom. You could eventually have like different reporters, and each reporter has a pool behind them, and that pool you're basically staking a token to show support, and by supporting that journalist, if you support them early, let's say you gain more rewards, I guess, from staking early because you're taking a little more risk. Maybe this person's a terrible reporter, but then as someone becomes more established, it costs a little more. So anyways, I guess if someone runs with that, I think it would be really interesting. And I think it's cool that you guys are thinking about that, because it just, I have always found with my friends that work as journalists, it's just a really tough space and relentless here in crypto. So Anyways, I couldn't be a better advertisement, I guess, today for someone to like. I'm like, oh yeah, don't become a journalist in crypto. It looks really really freaking hard.
It is hard. I can confirm. Don't, I mean, being a journalist, period, is hard, man. Like
Yeah,
it's a tough business, but yeah, it's certainly, the thing about this space that's really cool is that there's all these big ideas and all these people trying new things, and there's no playbook, right? Like there's no existing playbook in the crypto media sphere. So you're kind of you're kind of making it as you go, which it would probably be very terrifying to a lot of people, but also attractive to a certain type of person. Yes, if you are enterprising and you like taking a beating, and you want to surface things that are heretofore unverified or like unreported, then crypto news is the place for you. It's been, I can, like, just for me, the last 2 years have been probably the most rewarding, like, professional years of my career, just because it's been awesome to work with some really solid reporters in our newsroom who are just out there surfacing information that would otherwise not be reported. So it's cool.
Yeah. Okay, so I got one more question for you.
All right, let's do it.
Thankfully, I'm unprepared to ask it, but it's only because I was asking you beforehand what's top of mind. Can you explain, like, what is this internal memo of CoinDesk? Like, what was it? Why did you guys choose to publish it? And I guess, like, just like, what's the key takeaway from all of this? And I love the fact I actually tried Googling it after we talked and was like, I can't find it. So I was like, I don't even know if it exists at this point, but yes, if you can.
Oh man, okay. I hope it wasn't taken down. No, yeah, no. So we are a growing organization, and it has caused some internal tension. So one of my colleagues was kind enough to document all these tensions and get them to our senior management. So this being crypto media, an early version of that document was leaked out to some of our competitors. So we got wind of this, and we said, hey, you know what? It's probably best if we got ahead of this and just sort of put our cards on the table. There's nothing extremely damning in there or damaging, I hope. But it sort of sketches out, like, here are some current pain points. Here are some ways that we think we could avoid those pain points, and here are some ways that we think we can be better at sort of realizing this goal of being like, basically our goal is to be like what Wired the magazine was to, like, the early internet, and going back even farther, like what the Wall Street Journal was to, the stock market and equities, the concept of equities. Like, we see ourselves as being early at this, like, transformative moment where we could be that for cryptocurrency and the decentralized web. So everyone I work with feels strongly that this is a big goal that's worth taking seriously. And one of my colleagues was able to get some notes and feedback up to the top. Got leaked out. We decided to get ahead of it and just go public with it and kind of air it all out in public, rather than it being taken in dribs and drabs and used for whatever nefarious purposes. But yeah,
one idea just I want to drill down into is what you're talking about with Bitcoin and Ethereum. Like, both provide different types of value, I would argue. Maybe there's some overlapping value with a store of value with Ethereum and Bitcoin, but end of day, there's a lot of value between the two. I think it'd be kind of a sad world, if obviously one had disappeared. Similarly with news, as someone who just consumes that news, I'm kind of grateful that there's a number of you, pushing out stories, other than the fact that, I do think of CoinDesk and the block, the two of you, as these top dogs. And I still think there is, you guys have been here longer. I respect what the block has done as well. Just kind of like curious, like, how, like, do you think that, is there, room for multiple outlets to be successful, or will there always have to be this, I think you guys are very competitive. I mean, like, I've been recognizing there's this battle of scoops going on, and like, what's the how do you break that down as a strategy?
Yeah, for sure. I also agree. I think we at the block are also the top dogs, and I think there are some other, like, great outlets that do great work from time to time. And I think, like, it's a marketplace, right? It's like, you're competing to provide the best services to a market of very information hungry readers. So there's certainly there is certainly a healthy competition between the two. The block, like I have former colleagues who work at the block, and we keep in touch, and we sort of, rib each other back and forth about who's scooping who on a given week. But yeah,
I like it. It's a little playful. I'm sure it's stressful for everyone that, like you said, like it's a marketplace. So at the end of the day, like these are businesses, but I mean, gosh, like it's just such a hard job. I feel like very few people in the world can really understand the process and just what you all are going through on a day-to-day basis, especially in this space. Zach, any final thoughts on what's happened recently with PayPal? Like that's been sort of the big news, and just the fact that MicroStrategy is holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet, and what is it, Square is as well. Like, do you think it's as big a news as someone who actually produces and curates that news, or are we still a long way from massive adoption?
I think we're still a long way from massive adoption. I think it's easy to like when you're in the space every day, it's kind of easy to like think it's bigger than it really is. We have big ideas and big personalities, and like so the conflict and the narratives feel big like in this little world, but like it's worth remembering that it's still a very little world relative to the bigger outside world. So stories like PayPal captivate the attention and the interest of a much bigger sort of like population of people who are interested in tech and interested in fintech. And so when those stories come along, we certainly see an uptick in demand for stories like that, right? Like for people in the community, it's one of those signs that it's another example of many examples of being on the cusp of mainstream adoption. And for a lot of people outside of that bubble, it's, oh, okay, maybe I should take this seriously. This is Bitcoin in a headline that's not about dark web crime. Oh, okay, interesting. A company that I know and respect and use is actually thinking about using Bitcoin as one of its currencies. Okay, cool. So it is really interesting to see those moments percolate, and they resonate for a number of different groups of people in a number of different ways. And it's cool to get to watch that unfold, especially like at what seems like an increased pace in the last 6 months, I'd say. But it seems like crypto is forever always on the cusp, and maybe just maybe we'll sort of get over that. It's hard to say when and how we will know that we're over that, but until that point, it's a really interesting story to cover day in, day out, and I love doing it. So yeah.
I saw a Top Dog on CNBC just yesterday. Randomly, I had it on. I don't really watch it most days. And he said, oh, many people have missed that Ethereum is going to settle 1 trillion in transactions this year. And I was floored. I was like, holy cow, like that just came up, and it's a non-Bitcoin topic. So yeah, I mean, every story counts, and there's a ripple effect to it. So Zach, thanks for joining me. Appreciate you staying longer. I would tell anyone you gotta dig in to all of the DeFi that CoinDesk is covering. It's been a real huge shift that I noticed a year ago, and I think one of the writers I admire most is Brady. So just anyways, you got to keep paying attention there, because they're going deeper and deeper into these topics, and that's where you can learn a lot about DeFi. So Zach, anything else to leave us with? Otherwise, I'll let you go to your next interview.
Yeah, no. I work closely with Brady, and it has been an education in and of itself. So yeah, follow Brady Dale on Twitter. He's a good follow as well. Type that on the bottom. Follow Brady Dale on Twitter.
Yeah, absolutely. So well, hey man, stay safe with your family. So good to catch up with you. And,
yeah, for sure.
Always good to talk to another crypto dad. So take care.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be on here, DeFi Dad, and I hope I talk to you soon.
All right, bye everyone. We'll see you tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern for an interview with Diane from Dodo. Stay safe.